Hi, this is Alan, and I'm going to show you how to garter knit a scarf. We're going to do all the steps, and you're going to need yarn and appropriate size knitting needles. Now the yarn that you buy, especially if you go to a craft store, is going to have a recommended needle size on it. And if you go to a more rural store where there isn't really tags and things like that with recommendations, the people in the store, I'm sure, would help you find an appropriate size. So once you've got those things, we're going to take the yarn in our left hand and do what's called a slip stitch. So you're going to bring the yarn in front and around 2 fingers and make an X. Then in the back, you're just going to slip it through and pull. And the reason they call this a slip stitch is because it slips out. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to put it through one of the needles, or one of the needles through it, and cast on. So if you have an idea of the width of your scarf, or if you're following a pattern, then just cast on that many stitches. I'm going to do 20 just to keep it even. So you're going to stick the needle through, bring the yarn around the back and through both needles, then pull it through. So I'm going to show that again. Around the back, through both needles, and pull it through like that. Then just twist it back onto the original needle. Now I'm showing this cast on because it's very similar to the knit stitch, which is the stitch you're going to be using to knit the entire scarf. So we're just going to repeat that process, going in through the front, and then pulling the yarn through, and putting it back on the needle until you have the number of stitches that you're looking for. One more. Okay, so this cast on is relatively loose. So even though it only takes up about 4 or 5 inches on the needle, once I do the next row, it's going to expand a few inches. And depending on how tight or loose you knit, it's going to expand more or less. So you have to get a feel for your own knitting style before you can accurately predict. But I'm going to start knitting now. So it's going to be the same. You put it through the front of the first stitch, wrap the yarn around the back and through the needles, pull it through, and then the only thing different now is instead of putting it back onto the original needle, you're just going to pull it off. And that's a knit stitch. So we're going to do that another 19 times. Now one thing that I like to do is when I get to the last stitch, instead of knitting it, I just slip it onto the new needle. And what that does is kind of expand that last stitch over 2 rows rather than 1, and can make a much neater edge. But once you've done that, you're just going to turn around and continue. So go back through it like it was a regular knit stitch and pull it off. So you can see now how much wider the scarf is going to be, and it should stay at about this width for the rest of the scarf, provided stitches don't get dropped along the way. And the pattern that's forming, which is these sort of little knobs on both sides, is called the garter stitch. And it's formed by knitting on both the right and the wrong side of the fabric. So on straight needles, every time you turn it, you're turning from the right side to the wrong side and then back again. And by knitting both sides, you're just moving that shape to either end, alternating rows. So I'm going to keep knitting like this for about another 6 or 7 rows so that the pattern it's making can be really clear. And then I'm going to show you how to cast off. Okay, so I've knit up a bit, and this is the garter stitch. And so that's what it looks like on both sides. And now you may want to pause the video and come back in a week when you've knit a few more feet. But I'm going to show you how to cast off now, and this is how you're going to end your scarf when you get there. So you're going to knit the first 2 stitches. And then before you continue, you're going to take the first stitch and pass it over the second. And then knit 1 more stitch. And repeat that process of taking the first one and passing it over. And so we're slowly binding off the yarn and giving it a nice edge. And once you get to your last stitch, you're just going to cut this yarn and thread it through that hole. You pull and it'll get tight and you'll have your garter knit scarf. So thank you, this is Alan, and this is how to make a garter knit scarf.